Hi guys, Grand J here and welcome to our 5th Opus 4 set review. Today we'll be talking about the lightning cards. So the first card we'll be talking about is Archangel Evie. It's a free cost 6,000 power forward. When Archangel Evie deals damage to a forward, increases damage by 2,000 instead. And if Archangel Evie is dealt damage by a character, reduces damage by 2,000 instead. So Archangel Evie really reminds me a lot of Rosso from Opus 2. So it's a free cost forward that's a little bit undersized, but it has decent ability to fight up against forwards that are a little bit bigger than it. So when it's effectively dealing against any sort of 7,000 power forward, it's able to deal enough damage to lethal over it, and it's able to survive it. So in combat against a 7,000 power forward, it takes 7,000 damage, reduces by 2,000, and then it goes down to 5,000 damage effectively. So this card is a little bit undersized technically in terms of like being free for 6,000, but it does have an ability that does compensate for that. That being said though, this card is weak against summons, so it doesn't have any sort of ability to reduce damage that it receives from summons. So it is a bit of a weakness, and being at 6,000 power, that's a little bit of a bad number to be at, because a lot of summons are able to deal with 6,000 damage by itself very easily. So this card does have a weakness. That being said, it is a free cost forward, so that does combo well with Alcid. That being said though, there are quite a few other forwards in the free cost slot that are already from this set that are already pretty good with Azul, and I think that this card doesn't really sort of fit into like the whole lightning suite. And so yeah, I don't think that this card would really see much play in the sort of lightning deck, because it doesn't really add anything to the lightning deck that lightning really needs to either increase its power or to reduce its susceptibility against any particular types of strategies. Right now, what the lightning suite has without Sid, Onion Knight, Rigdia, all that, that's already pretty good, and I don't think Archangel Evie really sort of like changes that up or makes that system any better. Next card is Azul. It's a 5 cost forward at 8,000 power, so it's a little bit below the curve, but when Azul is put from the field into a break zone, choose one lightning monster of cost 3 or less from your break zone, you may play it onto the field. So, this card is effectively a 4 cost forward in terms of size, but then it's able to give you some bonus value in terms of being able to summon a lightning monster. Right now in this set, they're currently free, so there's Yoman, Dragon, and Behemoth. And obviously, Behemoth is probably the lightning monster that will get you the most value. If you do consider the fact that if you're getting at least a 1 cost monster, it's already kind of like equal to what its value should be, then all of a sudden, if you do get Dragon or Behemoth, then you are getting positive value. That being said though, 5 cost is a bit of a hurdle to get over in terms of like, you'll generally be discarding a card in order to put this card into play because the initial cost is so high. If it was at 4 cost, it'd be a little bit easier to do. At 5 costs, you need 3 backups and discard 1 card, or yeah, that's a little bit difficult, or you need 5 backups. So it's kind of expensive to put this guy into play, and he doesn't really give you any sort of immediate value. In addition, any sort of deck that has any sort of ability to get around into break zone abilities, such as Earth's ability to do that, or Fire's ability to do that, now with Behemoth, and Water's ability to bounce guys, this card can very easily be returned to hand or be broken in a way that doesn't give you the value of your monsters. So you really are putting your faith into this guy actually dying in order to gain its value, and it's not a super impactful card. In addition, it doesn't really have any sort of other effects besides from this one effect, so this card doesn't bring enough value, isn't flexible enough, and because of that, I don't think this card is very good. Definitely, you could probably chuck it into some sort of monster-based deck and you'll probably be fine, but this card like is quite inflexible and doesn't have the ability to handle different sort of situations particularly well, and so because of that, I don't think this card is particularly great. Next card is Usher. It's a 3 cost backup, EX Burst. When Usher enters the field, you may search for one card named DGS Trooper, First Class, or a card named Deep Ground Soldier add to your hand. So this card sort of adds into that ice deck from Opus 3 that had the Deep Ground Soldier and the DGS Troopers. This card being lightning though is however its biggest issue. Simply because the DGS Soldier deck is a standard unit deck mostly, and there doesn't seem to be very much synergy to put lightning into it. Typically, the synergies that you see the most that give the most support to stand units would either be Water through Warrior of Light or through Ice that gives you Arc. So, sort of DGS Troopers, they don't get any sort of value from this card from being in lightning, so this card is a really difficult card to play. In addition to that, Usher, yeah, like is already searching for cards that already sort of search themselves out, so this card doesn't have a huge amount of value. Generally, most of the time, from my experience, you probably be wanting to use Usher to search for the 2 cost Deep Ground Soldier, so you can begin the entire search chain. But other than that, this card doesn't really add that much value to the deck, to the combo, and it's in a color that's pretty incompatible. Next, we have Esther Soldier. So Esther Soldier is a 2-cost backup. When Esther Soldier enters the field, choose 1 forward of cost 4 less than opponent controls and dull it. So this card seems to be a tempo sort of aggressive card, but can also be used in control plays from my perspective. So the way that I see this card being played is you've already got, say, 1 or 2 forwards on the field, and you don't want to really commit too much more forwards to your opponent, but then your opponent is playing forwards that are stopping you. Esther Soldier gives you the opportunity to put backups down to build up your resource while you've already got a bit of a board, and allows you to be able to push them through your opponent's blockers. So this card is quite a good tempo play. If you've already got forwards, then this guy will allow you to build up resources while also playing aggressively. Not only that, it's also not a bad sort of mid-game play. And if you've got any sort of ability to break your backups, then this card being cheap and efficient, having a good ability, means that you can like break it later on using, say, Heroic Lulu's ability in order to sort of build a longer game strategy, freeing up backups to allow you to play more of these from your hand. So this card is pretty good. It can be played in sort of tempo or sort of like more longer control games. And so because of that, I think this card will see play. Next card is Orlando. So this card seems pretty good. It's a 5-cost 9,000 power forward, so it's on curve. When Orlando enters the field, choose 1 damage forward, break it. In addition, it's got an S ability, Shadow Blade, so S double lightning, choose 1 forward, it loses 7,000 power until the end of the turn, activate Orlando. So both of these effects are actually pretty good. So because the lightning has so many different ways to ping forwards, Orlando's first ability is almost always going to trigger. Nearly every single time when you play Orlando, you're generally going to be taking out a forward with its ability. Its S ability is also pretty good, both on offense and defense, in terms of if you're attacking with Orlando, if your opponent has any sort of combat tricks, you can always use Orlando's ability to cause a forward to like lose a significant amount of power. 7,000 power loss is actually pretty good, so it forces most mid-range forwards to completely die outright, or it pretty much makes any of your opponent's big forwards small enough to a point where any of your guys can run over them. So this card basically allows you to win any fight, and it allows you to remove any sort of mid-range forward as well. So that's pretty good. Also, as a side bonus, it allows you to activate Orlando. So if you're attacking, you can reactivate him so he's ready for defense. Or if your opponent is playing any sort of dull strategies, then it gives you the ability to like kill a guy and then reactivate him. This card is particularly relevant against ice decks. So if your opponent is playing cards like Snow, cards like Genesis, cards like the new Sarah, if your opponent is like using these effects to dull, say, Orlando, and like on defense, if your opponent attacks with something, you can always use his ability to reactivate Orlando, kill one of your opponent's forwards, and then have Orlando ready to block. So that's really strong ability. Losing 7,000 power against ice is really good, and that's where to activate is also even better. So Orlando is a strong card. If ice becomes even more prevalent than it actually is, or than it currently is, then this card will see significantly more play. I think this is a great card. I'm not sure how good it is to the point of whether you'd include Opus 1 Orlando to get more S triggers out of him. I probably don't think it'll go that far, but on itself right now it's pretty good. Not to mention it's an FFT card, so it does have some sort of synergy with the Legendary Deleter as well. Next card is Black Waltz Free. It's a free cost 6,000 power forward. When Black Waltz Free enters the field, choose 1 forward, it loses 2,000 power until the end of the turn. And when Black Waltz Free is put from the field into the break zone, choose 1 forward, it loses 2,000 power until the end of the turn. So this card is another free cost forward, and I think that this card can add into the Alcid suite pretty well. So when you consider that Alcid comes in and deals 6,000 damage to a forward, Black Waltz can then follow up and then reduce the power of that forward by 2,000, giving you effectively the way to basically get rid of 8,000 power forwards, which is a little bit less than, say, Rigdia Alcid, but Black Waltz 3 has a better body than Rigdia and has the ability to trade against other AKs when he's on the field. So when Black Waltz then like enters combat with something, it can deal 6,000 damage to it, it possibly dies, and then it deals another 2,000 damage to the opponent's forward, which breaks it as well. So Black Waltz is actually not a bad card. You probably don't want to play it as just like a straight up forward because it's a little bit small and it's going to be forced to trade against your opponent's 7Ks. Or 8Ks, but this card, like when it's combo with Alcid, I think is actually quite good. So I think that this card will see play. Next card is Warrior. So it's a 2-cost standard unit forward. If Warrior receives damage, double the damage instead. So effectively, this card acts very similarly to what Mystic Knight did from from Opus 3. Because it basically gives it effectively 4,000 power in terms of defense, but allows it to deal 8,000 damage in offense. Mystic Knight was kind of the same in terms of being 4,000 power, but whenever it dies, it dealt 4,000 damage to another forward. So they kind of work in similar ways. That being said though, Warrior has both advantages and disadvantages. So like the disadvantages is that it does die to nukes very easily, simply because any sort of nuke that does 4,000 damage doubles to Warrior and sort of breaks him much easier. But he is resistant against power reduction abilities. So your opponent, whenever they use power reduction abilities, such as like a Black Mage or something, or a Cyclops, this card's power doesn't drop nearly as much and generally won't be lethaled out. So that's one bonus to him. He also has the benefit of that if you can use First Strike in lightning based decks, and lightning decks has like got a lot of support with First Strike this set, so potentially Warrior can be first striking out other 8Ks without dying, whereas Mystic Knight doesn't give you the ability to do that. So this card's actually not a bad card, but you sort of have to build the right support around him. That being said though, like I probably wouldn't want to pin my entire strategy around this guy, but if you got an entire strategy sort of built around sort of like gaining First Strike, then this card probably sits into that pretty well. Talking about First Strike, we got Lancer. So it's a 2-cost backup. So dull, break, put Lancer in the break zone. Choose one forward, it gains First Strike until the end of the turn. So it's pretty simple and straightforward ability. This works on any sort of forward. So previously, Lightning had a backup that allowed them to gain First Strike, but that was Mackie, but that was only for Lightning forwards, whereas Lancer applies to any sort of forward. So this card is actually pretty good. Definitely in Lightning, it works quite well because Lightning has a lot of ways to do ping damage, but I definitely can see that this card would see play in like a Wind Lightning deck or in a Fire Lightning deck. So First Strike is actually a very potent ability, especially for any decks that can deal ping damage. So this card's a pretty good way of doing it. I don't think that this card will see too much play simply because there's currently a lightning monster that does effectively the same thing and draws you a card as well. So it's really up to decks to determine whether they need the backup space, whether they want lightning backups, or whether they prefer to use Yeoman. So this card's a pretty solid card, but I think it might be a little bit overshadowed by Yeoman's ability. Next card is Distarg. It's a 3-cost 6,000 power forward. When Distarg is put from the field into the break zone, choose one active forward an opponent controls and deal it 7,000 damage. So this card has a pretty strong ability. So being able to deal 7,000 damage means that when it leaves play, it's generally going to be taking out a mid-sized forward with him. Or if he blocks something that's, or if he went against something that's a little bit bigger, then he's able to take it out. He can't really take a attacker out with him when he's blocking because generally the attacker is dull unless they're brave. So this card gives you decent trading potential. It is a free cost as well, so you can combo with Alcid, but because it doesn't have enter play ability, it's going to be very difficult to use with Alcid because you're not killing anything on play. So I don't think that this card is going to see play in like your standard lightning deck because it doesn't combo with the Alcid package particularly well. However, the things that do increase the value of this card is the fact that it's a knight and the fact that it's an FFT. So if you are trying to build the Knights deck or the FFT base Knights deck, then this card adds into that very well. So it synergizes very well with legendary Ramza, who is able to increase his power because of the other FFT characters, can give it haste, first strike, and plus 1,000, which makes it a more relevant threat to deal with. Also, if you're like splashing in water, it does buff up with Ophelia to 7,000, which is pretty good as well. And so this card does have its potential combo uses as well. If you're playing the Lightning Water Knights build, and like I've got a draft list I'll be putting up sometime in the near future, you've also got little cheesy things you can do. So you can use like Astrologian to reactivate one of your opponent's forwards when this guy dies. So you're able to choose one of their forwards and deal 7,000 damage to it. So that's just like a kind of cool little thing you can do with this card. That being said though, this card on surface not strong enough because its size is a little bit small, but the fact that because it's a knight and an FFT character does allow it to be played in a more nichier deck and will probably have a decent effect because of it. Next, we have Dragon. So it's a 2-cost monster that effectively acts like Odin. So for Lightning, put Dragon into Break Zone, choose one monster of cost 4 or less, break it. Or for Lightning 1, put Dragon into Break Zone, choose one forward of 4 or less and break it. So this card is basically a monster version of Odin. So the benefit is that it does allow you to break up its cost, so you're able to spend 2 early on to put Dragon into play, and whenever you need it, you can then spend the following Lightning 1 in order to use its ability to break it forward of cost 4 or less. In addition to this, it's got the flexibility over Odin to be able to destroy a monster 4 or less. So at this stage, all monsters are cost 3 or less at this stage, so this pretty much wipes any monster, so that's another handy thing to have. So depending on how prevalent monsters are going to be in the metagame and which ones are seeing played, and this card may find itself shifting into Odin's position, which may not be too bad, but like the more dragons we see, the more anti-monster removal we might find, and so because of that, Dragon might sort of see more or less play. So if anti-monster removal is more prevalent, then we'll see less dragons. But if we see more monsters, then we'll see more dragons, and sort of kind of cycles through like that. That being said, though, this card probably is decent enough to replace some of the Odin. So maybe not remove all three 4-cost Odins from the deck, but maybe sort of split like a 2-1 or a 2-2 or a 1-2, and that might be a decent way to start off. And then like whenever you've got dragon and you need to break a monster, it gives you a good opportunity to do that. Next, we have Nashu. It's a 2-cost backup when the card named Hildebrand you control gains haste, and also it's got dull. Choose one card named Hildebrand you control. It gains plus 2,000 power until the end of the turn. So this card is, a backup that specifically deals with only one forward in the game, and there's only one copy of that forward right now. So it doesn't have a lot of use, this card. That being said, though, it does bring a lot of value to a deck that is playing Hildebrand in terms of giving it haste and giving it plus 2,000 power whenever you need to. It's not a bad card. Hildebrand is kind of semi-resilient because of its ability, so there is a possibility to build a casual deck around this, or have like a small part of your deck set to this engine. So that's not a bad idea at all. This card is like definitely not a competitive card, but like definitely if you want to sort of play around with the idea, then yeah, definitely go for it. Next is Ninja. It's a 2-cost forward with haste, 3,000 power. So it's a standard unit card, so it's got a little bit of bonus there, but this card doesn't really have much going for it. I do know that some Golbez decks try putting this in just as another haste card, and besides from that, I don't really see much more value in this card. Lightning already inherently has ways to give its guys haste, and they generally want to be playing forwards that either combo with Alcid or forwards that are disabling forwards by themselves. So you want to have like stuff like Armon, or you want to have stuff like Alcid, Rigdia, Onion Knight, or forwards that can just fight, such as Gilgamesh. And Ninja kind of doesn't offer enough utility to the Lightning suite to really justify it. And even though it's got haste, Lightning has ways to get haste, so it doesn't provide a value that Lightning doesn't already have. And because of that, Ninja won't really see much play. Hildebrand. So it's a 3-cost forward, 7,000 power, and it's got a really sort of like weird ability. So if Hildebrand leaves the field due to your opponent's summons or abilities, return them to your hand instead. Brackets, Hildebrand does not return to your hand if he receives damage higher than his power, or his power is reduced to 0. So just a quick little note to sort of explain all of that. So what that means is if ability that would sort of just break him, or any sort of ability that would sort of remove him from the game from like a card's effect, if any of that would apply to Hildebrand, then he returns to your hand instead. If any summon deals damage to him and he dies because of the damage, then he's sent to the break zone as per normal. There is a bit of incorrect text on the brackets part where it says Hildebrand does not return to your hand if he receives damage higher than his power. That should be higher or equal than his power, because in the case where he does receive damage higher than his power, he's being sent to the break zone by a game mechanic, not via a summon. So that's something to know as well. Even abilities that would remove from the game instead, such as Behemoth, they don't apply because the damage is being dealt to him and he's being removed by a game mechanic. So yeah, that sort of explains his ability. So basically, it's any sort of like send to the break zone or any sort of like breaker forward ability. That's what Hildebrand sort of bounces your hand on. So for example, if your opponent uses like an Odin, or if your opponent uses say a Fanfred or some sort of ability like that, Hildebrand will return to your hand instead of going to the break zone. That's what his effective ability does. He's also got an S ability, so S Lightning, reveal the top card of your deck. If it is forward, play it onto the field dull. If not, put it into the break zone. So like any forward that only has one copy of itself, you're not going to get these S abilities too often, and this is a very, very tricky S ability to use. So like it's very difficult to plan around this unless you play an all forwards deck such as the Strongest Sword Gilgamesh deck. You won't be getting off this effect successfully too often, and you don't have much control in terms of what you're playing. If you do reveal a forward off the top of your deck, that's already a forward. That's a copy of a forward you already have on play. Then it isn't sent to a break zone and isn't placed on the field, but it stays at the top of your deck. So there's a lot of gambling and a lot of risk to using this card, and I don't really think the S ability really sort of justifies it. He's already got like decent stats, and with Nashu, he also gains haste and has potential to go up to 9,000 power as well. So it is possible to start using him as an aggressive beat stick for Lightning, especially if you've got Nashu buffing him up, and you're using say Rare Lulu, you can able to like use him offensively, and he's got kind of a pseudo ability to like gain value whenever he's like being removed by removal abilities. So this card is not terrible. Potentially Lightning might see him being played in a more aggressive mid-rangey sort of like Lightning deck as just like a standard forward, maybe with Nashri just kind of like slapped on as a bit of a bonus. This card's not bad. I would not want to rely on his S ability though, but there definitely will be times where someone's going to desperately need a forward and they're going to lose if they don't, and they're just like, all right, let's roll the dice. They like do the S abilities, oh, whatever. A forward comes out and they somehow get saved by some crazy random luck. So this card, like, I suppose it's a super risky play that your opponent kind of has to respect occasionally on the rare occasion. Next card is King of Burmecia. It's a free cost backup with EX Burst. When King of Burmecia enters the field, you may search your deck for one Job Dragoon or card named Dragoon and add it to your hand. So obviously this card sort of goes into the Dragoon archetype. There's been a lot of support for the Dragoon archetype in the past, and I think that this card is a great card to add to that archetype. So definitely the Dragoon deck seems to be a Lightning Water type build, simply because Kain is in Lightning and most of the Dragoons are Lightning, but Kain also gets support from Rosa. And yeah, Rosa's a water forward, no, a water forward or a water backup. And so because of that, Lightning and Water do synergize particularly well for this Dragoon build. And also Water has Brand this set that allows you to search for standard units, which is what most of Dragoons are. So this card, like, definitely will see play in a Dragoon deck. I don't think the Dragoon deck is going to be tier 1, but I think it can sort of sit in this nice, like, tier 1 to like 1.5, sit somewhere in between there as a semi-competitive deck. So yeah, this card will be fun. If you're interested in playing Dragoons or you want to play a more standard unit deck, then this card is definitely the way to go. Next card is Behemoth. It's a free cost monster. For 1 lightning until the end of the turn, Behemoth becomes a forward with 8,000 power, and when Behemoth receives damage from a forward, deal that forward damage equal to half the damage you received. You can only use this ability once per turn. So Behemoth is an aggressive forward. So you want to use him and you want to attack with him, and then basically if he's ever blocked or if he is like ever blocking anything, then he'll be able to like deal half the damage of that forward back. Considering his base power is 8,000 already, then that means he's generally taking out any forward that he's in combat with. So like Behemoth is like literally a behemoth. He is going to like go in and like win fights or take guys down with him. This card is, yeah, like, it's a little bit expensive if you want to use it to just, like, deal your opponent damage, because you have to pay lightning every time you want to attack with this guy. So that's a little bit expensive. But the fact that he's such a favorable trade, and if you have a deck that's able to get these guys in for cheap or use these guys as a renewable resource, then this card is definitely going to be better. So if you are playing this deck in, like, an Azul deck, or an Azul water deck, then this card becomes significantly better. If you have Mirror to reduce his cost from 3 to 2, then that makes this card very, very much more playable. And every time he trades in a fight, and you need a forward bigger than 8,000 power to trade against this guy. You need a forward that's 8,000 power more to trade against this guy. Yeah, you'll be able to like send this guy in, like kill anything that's smaller than him, or trade up against anything that's bigger. And using Mirror or Azul, you can renew these guys and get a whole bunch of them. And your opponent's constantly going to have to deal with like a big resource discrepancy every time you send these guys in. So this card is like definitely going to be the cornerstone of a particular type of deck, and I'm interested to see what the Lightning Water monster deck can sort of really bring out. Next card is Magus. So it's a 5-cost backup. When Magus enters the field, choose 1 forward, deal it 7,000 damage. If you control 5 or more standard units, deal it 9,000 damage instead. So first thing to note that it does say 5 or more standard units, so it does include itself. So if you control 4 other standard units, it deals 9,000 damage. So at 5 cost, this is actually like a reasonably well-costed ability. So yeah, you're effectively paying 2 CP for a backup, and then you sort of get the equivalent of a free CP nuke attached to it. So you're getting the equivalent of a Brynhilda attached to it. So in terms of like CP value, this all sort of adds up. So that's a good spot there. Definitely, if you hit the 5 standard unit bonus, 9,000 is a very good number to hit. You're wiping out pretty much anything that's like upper tier forwards, and anything that's like bigger than that is generally a really big forward. So this backup hits a lot of really good numbers. Unfortunately, it's like a backup that you can't really use too often because it's 5 costs, and it's sort of you need to get to quite in the late game in order to use its main ability, and it kind of does lock you into playing a very standard unit focus deck if you want to get that 9,000. If you want to hit the 7,000, there are better options in Lightning. So Lightning already has plenty of other options to deal around the 6-7k mark, and because of that, Magus probably won't see too much play, but definitely if you're playing something that's a little bit more standard unit focused, then this card does bring a lot of value to the table. Potentially if you're playing the Dragoon deck and you've got like some Dragoons on the field and you have like 2 standard unit backups, then potentially Magus might be able to be more relevant in your game. So it's not a bad card, definitely have to build around it, or if the deck is already themed very much around standard units, then definitely Magus can be a very easy high tempo value play in those decks. Next card is Magus, 2-cost backup. For dull break, put Magus in the break zone, choose one active forward, deal it 4,000 damage. So this card is very similar to Opus 2 Black Mage. So Opus 2 Black Mage is, when it comes into play, give a forward minus 4,000 power. So it does like deal with that same number of 4,000, and it's a 2-cost backup. And so there are some pros and cons to it. So first of all, you can't use this effect immediately, but the thing is you are able to bank this ability up for later. So a lot of times when lightning players, they need to get that 2-cost backup down on their first turn, and they don't have a black mage, they put that black mage down very reluctantly. They don't get the value out of that minus 4,000 power, and they kind of feel sad inside. If you do this with Magus, you can always put it down, and then you can always like use the ability later on to break it and then deal with a like medium, like a small size forward, or use it to allow one of your smaller guys to trade up against a bigger guy. So this card does have its benefits. You can play it down, you sort of bank it, and then like use this effect later when you need other backups and you need the backup space. So this card is actually pretty good. The fact that it only hits active forwards is a little bit annoying, but it does mean that it can sort of like combo with certain other lightning cards. So if you don't have Azul, for example, and you're holding Onion Knights or you're holding Rigdias, then Magus can allow you to just deal the initial 4k and then you can finish off with Rigdia or Onion Knight. So this card actually provides a lot of good options. It doesn't require any other CP to be paid for it. So it's actually pretty good. So depending on what the lightning decks need for its backup line, then Magus definitely could be a decent card to put in. And yeah, for very good reasons. Next card is Raiden. So it's a 9 CP summon. Choose 2 forwards an opponent controls, remove the first forward from the game, and break the other. So it's very much like Behemoth from Opus 1 in terms of you choosing 2 guys, and you're basically blowing 2 guys up. And you also get the bonus of removing a guy. So that being said though, how does it compare against Behemoth? So yes, it does have the ability to just break a guy and remove a guy, as compared to Behemoth, which you had to deal 10,000 damage to guys, which most of the time you'll be fine, but there were those niche situations where 10,000 wasn't enough. So you do get the reliability of just straight up killing guys. That being said though, there are certain forwards that are like immune or resistant against like break abilities or remove from game abilities, such as Hildebrand, such as Vincent, but like those are very niche situations, and you just kind of like choose your target specifically around that. It does only remove one of the forwards from the game, but I don't think there's too many situations where you need both forwards to be removed from the game. Generally, yeah, if you need to deal with a guy that has an enter break zone ability, you choose that as a removal, and the second guy is just like another guy that's just a brick wall that you kind of need to remove. So only removing one is generally fine. I don't think you need to remove both in a lot of cases. So I think it's like, I think on paper, it definitely does its job, but I think it's really kind of expensive because Lightning Aura has a lot of ways to remove guys, and I think paying 9 for Raiden is kind of a little bit pricey. In a lot of cases, Lightning decks would rather have like 7-cost Odin because that's an EX burst. So there are times where you can get EX burst value, and then like you're really reluctantly going to spend 7 CP to cast Odin. So if you play Raiden, you're probably going to have to cut those Odin 7 like slots down a lot, because like having Raidens and Odins, that's like it's very overcosted, and you probably wouldn't want to pay that much because of that. And so because of this, I don't think Raiden will see much play because it clashes with Odin 7, and Odin 7, you're at least getting value off it as an EX burst. Next card is Lightning, and this is a very good legend for the set. It's a 5-cost 7,000 power forward. It's got haste. When Lightning enters the field or attacks, choose one forward opponent controls. If you can control a category 13 character other than Lightning, dull it. It's got another ability, discard a card named Lightning, remove Lightning from the game, then play Lightning onto the field, dull. So first of all, this card compares a lot like the Opus 1 4-cost Lightning, where she has haste, enters the break zone, like enters the field, dull forward at 4,000 power. So you're paying effectively 1 CP more to get plus 3,000 extra power, which is actually pretty good. And you also get the ability to dull 2 guys, assuming you have another Final Fantasy 13 character, which, considering it says character, not forward, means that you can all you need is just 1 FF13 backup, and that's very, very easy to do. Then you're able to trigger this ability. When she comes into play or attacks, you get to dull forward. So the turn that she enters play, you're going to be able to dull 2 of your opponent's forwards, which generally will allow your 7k forward to like rush through and be actually able to deal damage. So yeah, this ability is really strong. Very easy to trigger off. She's got haste as well. So there's very few times where she isn't good. Also, like the random, like it's a pseudo S ability in terms of it can be a special, like it works like a S ability, but it's not an S ability. So it gets around certain cards such as 7, which counter special abilities, but it's just a payment ability. So discard 1 card named Lightning, remove Lightning from the game, then put Lightning into play and dull. So this is basically one of those effects that removes her as a target. So if your opponent's using an ability or a summon on her, you can always discard a card to remove it from the game and put it back in play. And when she comes back into play, she's considered a new target. So because of that, your opponent's abilities or summons on her fizzle, they like lose their targets. So lightning's ability allows her to dodge summons and abilities. So that's pretty good as well. So yeah. And it's not limited to your turn, so your opponent on their turn, if they want to try to use removal on it, you can always just discard a lightning from your hand to dodge her in and out, and then she's absolutely fine. So this card is really good. She's got 3 great abilities on her, and she's got not a terrible body considering her cost. So this card will definitely see a lot of play. I think FF13 got a lot of support to set, and I think they're going to come back, and it's a very strong card and reason to do it. Next is Ramu. It's a 1-cost summon, EX Burst. Choose one of the following 2 actions. Choose one forward of cost or less, break it, or choose one monster of cost 2 or less, break it. So this is a really versatile card, and when I was playing in Seal, it's actually really good. The fact that it's EX Burst is great because a lot of monsters have have abilities that allow them to consume themselves immediately. So stuff like goblins, stuff like Yeoman, these are all effects that they can break themselves and do their effect immediately and draw a card. So Remove can't really hit those things because in response your opponent will just use ability and draw a card. But as an EX Burst, Remove will allow you to remove those monsters and your opponent can't really respond to it. The fact that it hits monsters of 2 or less means it hits most of the monsters besides some really, really big ones. So it doesn't hit stuff like Behemoth and it doesn't hit stuff like Marlborough. But in a lot of other cases, it's going to be able to break monsters. In addition to this, it's also got the side benefit for breaking forwards of 2 costs or less. And looking from this set, there's actually a lot of really good 2-cost forwards. So it's always got the secondary ability to do that as well. Costing 1 is actually really good. So it's a summon that costs you 1, but allows you to remove a forward of cost 2 as well. So this card has a lot of flexibility. It's very well costed for what it does. Now, depending on the metagame, whether we're going to see a lot more sort of 2-cost related stuff, then we might see this being played more. But this card really sort of depends upon the metagame of A, how many monsters we see, and B, like where the numbers sit in terms of forwards. Now, this card is definitely going to be better against certain matchups than other matchups. So, for example, Ramu is significantly better against water, simply because they've got Lena to destroy their 2-cost forwards, or if they got Gal, then you're always destroying monsters as well. So, this card was going to be metagame dependent, and depending on where your metagame floats in terms of its colors, then this card will see more or less play, or he's a good card to increase or decrease depending on the metagame. Next card is Ramza. So it's a 2-cost 5,000 power forward, which from what people have told me, and I should probably correct myself, is on curve for anything that's not Earth. So it's a fair number to be at. That being said though, I still don't like forwards at 5,000 power. So Ramza's ability is when a forward you control is put from the field into break zone, activate Ramza. Dull, choose 1 forward against haste till the end of turn, and Dull, choose 1 forward against plus 1,000 power till the end of turn. So this card is very much a support card. It doesn't have a huge body, but it does have the ability to give a lot of utility. Giving haste or plus 1,000 power is actually both of those effects are really handy. So you put Ramza in play down early, maybe when you got 2 CP, and then on following turns when you do ramp up into some of your bigger forwards, Rams can allow them to haste in, or Rams always has the ability to give a guy plus 1,000 power on offense or defense. So that's also pretty good. Occasionally, Ramza will get an extra trigger because you lose a forward, but that's kind of a bonus. You can't really sort of trigger that too often, or you can't really sort of control that effect too often. But it's just kind of a side bonus for whenever one of your forwards trades. The big issue about this card is that it is Ramza though. So the fact that it's the FFT and it's not, which is fantastic, but the fact that it's Ramza though means that it clashes with the other Ramzas. And so 4-cost Ramza is already a pretty good beat stick, and 3-cost Ramza is this really good sort of mid-game play. And this Ramza clashes with those, and that's a big problem. And because of that, this Ramza won't see too much play because it really sort of messes around with those other cards because you can only have 1 Ramza on the field. Although that being said though, if the Knight's deck, or if the Lightning deck opts not to play the 4-cost Ramza, opts to play the 4-cost Ramza, we might see ourselves in a situation where it also plays this Ramza as well, just as an early game play, and at some point this Ramza is going to die. You can play the 4-cost Ramza later on because 4-cost Ramza is more of a ramp card, and you can have these additional 2-cost Ramzas in your hand to use its S ability as well. So this card will probably see play and not see play because its name's Ramza. So it probably won't see play because it clashes with other Ramzas that get in the way, or it will see play because you're running the Ramza that needs other Ramzas to use its S ability. Next card is Yeoman. It's a 1-cost monster. Put Yeoman into the break zone. Choose 1 forward against first strike until the end of turn. Draw 1 card. So this is a very simple, like very straightforward ability. It's very similar to what most elements have a monster of this style. And basically this card just basically says for 1 CP, give your guy first strike, because you draw a card off it as well. It does replace itself, so that's pretty good. It definitely fits in very well with lightning, because lightning's got ping effects, but I think this card is definitely more prevalent, going to be more relevant in a lot of duo color decks. So lightning fire is going to be good. Lightning wind would be pretty good as well, because these all have very cheap, very good ping effects. So Yo-Man is very, very flexible. So yeah, I definitely foresee this card like seeing a lot of play. It does cycle you through cards, so it's pretty good as well. And yeah, and it's a pretty good card, so it'll see play. It's just up to you in terms of like where you want to play it in terms of like your coloring. But it's got it's got a lot of good applications, and yeah, it'll see play. Next card is Dragoon. It's a 3-cost forward standard unit at 6,000 power. For lightning, Dragoon gains plus 2,000 power until the end of the turn. You can only use this ability once per turn. So it's a 3-cost. It's a 3-cost forward that is a little bit undercurved, so it is 6,000 power, but it does have the ability to pump itself to an 8k, which is where it's on, like, effectively it would be on curve because you effectively put 4 CP behind it. So that being said, though, it's really difficult to say whether this card's going to see play. Most of the Dragoons are a little bit undersized, but they usually have some sort of like ability to sort of compensate, so they either have haste or first strike. Now, size doesn't really matter too much with the Dragoons, because you're generally going to be relying on Kane to give them all plus 2,000 power, haste, and first strike. So in terms of size, that's not too bad. But then this Dragoon can get even larger. So if you have a Kane on the field, this Dragoon's going to be 8,000 power with first strike and haste, and you always have the option to pump him an extra 2,000 on top, which makes him a huge monster to get over. So that being said, though, this Dragoon might potentially be like the more beat stick heavier Dragoon, simply because it has that ability to pump up to 8, whereas all the other Dragoons are all sitting around the 5-6k mark, and they don't really have the same ability to pump themselves up. So this card is probably going to see play in the Dragoon deck. I definitely would like to experiment and play around with the Dragoon deck. It seems like fun, and I think that this guy's a decent addition to it. Next card is Restrictor. So it's a 3-cost backup that's EX burst. When Restrictor enters the field, you may search your deck for a job Tiviettes and add it to your hand. So currently, I believe there are 5 Tiviettes. So from this set, there was Azul, and most of the other Tiviettes were from previous sets. So you got Rosso from Fire, and you got 3 of them from Ice. So you got Shulk, you got Vice, and you got Nero. So yeah, I think those are only 5 Tiviettes in the game, and so Restrictor searches for those. Now some of these are actually pretty good. So Rosso's pretty good, Shulk's pretty good, and Azul's not bad. So you do have quite a couple of options to search for, but Restrictor is in Lightning though. So Lightning and Ice do pair up, but like the big issue is that he doesn't have a lot of targets within his own color. Now definitely if you're playing a more monster oriented deck and you wanted to use more Azuls, I could definitely see this being like a 1 or 2 of in your Lightning monster deck, so you can put this guy to play, search for your Azul, and put Azul into play. But besides from that, the applications for this card are like very narrow. It's really hard to like. That's the biggest problem with these sort of like EX burst backups, is that generally it's very difficult to use their abilities because they're sitting in colors that are different from the targets that you want to search. And if you do want convenience, you really narrow down the amount of targets. You only get 1 if you want to go into mono Lightning. Otherwise, between Lightning and Ice, you can play Restrictor to search a Shulk, which is probably not bad, but then, yeah, it gets a little bit more complicated from there. So this card does offer value. Like all of these backups, they're pretty straightforward in terms of what they can do. So if someone determines like if they want to build a Lightning Ice Shulk deck, and definitely Shulk pushes you into a duo color situation, then definitely that's like very viable. And yeah, we might see some play with it. So this card is not bad. Very hard to put it, or very hard to determine early on what sort of combination you want. But yeah, it can possibly see play. So that's it. Thanks for watching, guys. That's video number 5 for our Opus 4 set review. Just 2 more videos. I'm going to do a water video and put that out tomorrow, and then we'll finish up with a really quick light and dark video after that. So thanks a lot for watching, guys. If you guys enjoyed it, definitely thumbs up and subscribe. I really do appreciate it. It helps out with the YouTube analytics and all that sort of stuff. And if you have any questions or comments or feedback, definitely post them down in the section below. Let me know what you guys think. I do try to get back to everyone. And yeah, thanks a lot, guys. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Thanks for watching. Grand J out.